Gemini, if you are a woman who sleeps alone without your husband, the universe is warning you. If you're a woman lying in bed night after night with no one beside you, know this message is not an accident. It has found you at exactly the right moment, because the universe has something important to whisper into your heart. This is not about judgment. This is not about blame. This is about awakening. There's a space beside you that feels more than empty. It feels loud, a silence that echoes into your thoughts, a pause that stirs a deep knowing within you. You've tried to dismiss it as a phase, a decision, even freedom. But if you're honest, you felt it, haven't you? That subtle ache, that invisible question pulsing in your chest. Is this how it's supposed to be? Tonight, the universe speaks to the Gemini woman who is always strong, always thinking, always moving, and yet finds herself paused in stillness she didn't quite choose. The energy around you has shifted, and this solitude, it is not punishment, it is preparation. In this message, I'll help you understand why the specific moment of aloneness is sacred, why your sleeping alone is more than circumstance. It's a cosmic invitation, a call to return to something deeper, to recognize that the space beside you is not just waiting to be filled by someone else. It's waiting for you to come home to yourself first. If this message already stirs something inside you, like share or subscribe, and let the journey begin. Gate 1, the sacred stillness. Why your loneliness is not an absence, but an awakening. Gemini, you've always been a woman of motion. Your thoughts flicker like constellations. Your conversations carry color. Your laughter fills a room with life. And yet now, you find yourself in a moment that feels frozen. Each night, you lie down in a bed made only for you. The side that once held warmth, rhythm, breath, now holds silence. The world may see your independence. They may admire your strength. But the universe sees your soul. And your soul is whispering. Something is shifting. Are you listening? This is not about being without a husband or partner. It's about what that space beside you has come to symbolize. It's about the sacred question that silence is now forcing you to confront. Who are you when you are no longer defining yourself through someone else's presence? You may have told yourself that sleeping alone is simply the result of circumstance, a season, a choice. But deep within you, beneath the logic and the layered explanations, you know something else is at play. You feel it in your chest, the ache that comes not from missing a person, but from missing your own energy. You feel it when you look in the mirror and realize you've gone too long without really seeing yourself. This is not coincidence. It's not failure. It's not punishment. It's a cosmic pause. The universe, in all its fierce love, has created this pocket of solitude in your life because there's a transformation that simply cannot happen in noise. It cannot happen when your days are spent orbiting someone else's emotional gravity. It cannot happen when your nights are filled with compromise instead of clarity. Gemini, you are being pulled into the stillness because something within you is ready to awaken, and stillness is the only place where that voice can be heard. But I know how uncomfortable that stillness can be for you. You, who thrive in conversation, in ideas, in connection. You, who so often define yourself by how well you navigate between people, between thoughts, between truths. Now, with no one to bounce off of, you're left with the one person you spent a lifetime skimming past, yourself. And that, beloved, is the point. Because for too long, you defined your identity through who you are in relationship to others. The loyal partner, the curious lover, the one who adapts, adjusts, entertains, understands. But who are you when the audience is gone? When the show ends and all that's left is the hush of your own breath against the pillow? That silence is not empty. It is invitational. It's calling you to step off the stage and into your own sacred presence. To finally hear the thoughts you've drowned out with busyness. To feel the emotions you buried under being fine. To reclaim the parts of you that were sacrificed in the name of keeping peace, pleasing others, or simply surviving. Let me tell you about Aurelia, a Gemini woman in her 40s who came to me weeping, not because she had no partner, but because she'd forgotten how to belong to herself. After years of holding a marriage together by effort alone, she found herself sleeping alone night after night. And in that loneliness, she began to unravel, not in despair, but in clarity. It wasn't the absence of my husband that broke me, she said. It was the realization that I had spent so long avoiding myself. And that, Gemini, is the mirror now being held up for you. Your solitude is not here to echo your shame. It's here to restore your soul. It's not here to remind you of what's missing. It's here to help you remember what's been waiting inside you all along. But to see it, you must allow yourself to feel. You must stop numbing. Stop brushing it off. Stop turning your loneliness into a joke, or a badge of independence, or a signal of strength. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is admit you're ready to come home to yourself. Ask yourself now, with honesty, when was the last time I asked what I want? Not what I can do for others, not how I should be seen, but what genuinely brings me alive. When was the last time you made the bed and whispered, "This is mine, this is my space, this is sacred"? When was the last time you let the silence speak? Not as something to fear, but as something to feel. Because that silence, it's not abandonment, it's protection. The universe has cleared the space beside you so you can rediscover the parts of you that cannot bloom in someone else's shadow. It's cleared this path so you can remember that connection must begin within, or it will always feel like a performance. Gemini, you were never meant to be half of something. You are not incomplete. You are a cosmos unto yourself. And this time, this season of sleeping alone, is your invitation to return to that wholeness, not so that you can be alone forever, but so that you can never again confuse company with completion, so that your next love is not a rescue mission, but a meeting of two complete beings, so that you never again silence your own voice just to make someone else stay. You are being prepared, not punished. You are being softened, not broken. You are being asked to go within, not because there is something wrong, but because there is something right that is waiting to awaken. In Gate 2, we'll explore what this period of solitude is truly asking from you, and how to use it to reconnect with your feminine power, your emotional wisdom, and your sacred identity beyond relationship roles. For now, breathe, rest, and know the space beside you is not empty. It is full of possibility. Gate 2, the inner voice awakens, learning to hear yourself again. Gemini, if the silence beside you once felt like a void, now you're beginning to sense something else within it. Your own voice returning to you. At first, it may be faint. It may sound unfamiliar, even strange. But that is only because it has gone unheard for far too long. You spent years listening to others' needs, stories, moods, desires. But when was the last time you listened to yourself, without interruption, without filter, without fear? The truth is, being alone in bed each night is giving you something the world rarely does. Space to remember who you are beneath the noise. And Gemini, what a layered, vivid, magnificent soul you are. You have always been a communicator, a thinker, a seeker. But for far too long, your mental energy has been scattered outward, attuned to partners, friends, family, your ever-shifting world. You've been praised for your adaptability, for your grace, for your charm. And yet somewhere in the midst of it all, you forgot how to be present with your own spirit. This chapter of your life, marked by solitude, is not just about emotional rest. It's about energetic reorientation. It's about learning to sit with yourself long enough for your soul to speak again. And this time, you're not rushing past her words. You might begin to notice small moments of clarity, rising like mist from a still lake. You sit on the edge of your bed in the morning and suddenly remember something you once loved but let go of. You walk into the kitchen and feel tears rise for no reason other than your heart finally has permission to exhale. You open your journal and your pen surprises you by writing truths you didn't know you were ready to face. These are not coincidences. They are remembrances. You are coming home, not to a place, not to a partner, but to the original frequency of your being. And that frequency is beautiful. But this process isn't always gentle. Gemini, I won't romanticize the discomfort. There will be nights where the silence feels endless. Mornings where you ache for a voice that is not your own. Days where the weight of this inner work feels unbearable. But what you're experiencing is a detox, not from food or stress, but from the identities you've carried that were never fully yours. The perfect partner, the emotionally available lover, the understanding one, The Gemini who always knows how to bounce back, how to forgive, how to smile through it all. These versions of you were created in response to a world that praised your light, but rarely asked if you were okay. And now, without someone else beside you distracting the ache, that pain is rising to be seen, loved, and finally released. So how do you navigate this? You begin by speaking to yourself again, not mentally, but emotionally. Ask yourself each morning, how do I feel today? Not what do I need to do? Not who needs me? Not what's expected of me? Just, what am I feeling in this exact moment? You might be surprised by the answer. It might not be elegant. It might not be clear, but it will be true. And that truth, Gemini, is your first step back to wholeness. Let me share the story of Mila, another Gemini woman who had gone through a quiet separation years ago, but never truly processed it. For months, she slept alone and told herself she was fine, independent, strong. But every night she woke at 3 a.m. with a tightness in her chest she couldn't name. Only when she finally began journaling each night, not to perform, but to witness herself, did things shift. At first, it was scribbles, then questions, then grief, then rage, and then softness. She said, I had to hear myself cry before I could hear myself dream again. Gemini, perhaps this is your moment too. You may not realize it yet, but every night you sleep alone, you are repatterning your nervous system. You are learning that safety doesn't only come from a warm body beside you, but from a warm truth within you. That rest doesn't only come from silence, but from not betraying yourself anymore. That peace isn't just the absence of conflict, but the presence of integrity. This is not about being okay with being alone forever. This is about becoming someone who will never again settle for a relationship that requires her to dim her light just to be held. And this shift begins with daily, sacred self-connection. What does that look like? It looks like preparing your bed as if you are someone worthy of comfort, lighting a candle before sleep to signal that this room is your sanctuary, putting your phone away and placing your hand on your heart instead, asking softly, what truth did I silence today? What did I feel but not say? Listening, not fixing, not editing, just listening. Because the more you listen to your inner voice, the less you will tolerate anything that silences her. And as this voice becomes stronger, something magical begins to happen. You start feeling seen even in your solitude. You start feeling whole even without company. You start feeling beautiful not because someone tells you, but because you stop judging the woman staring back in the mirror. This is the healing the universe has been trying to give you all along. Not just to rest, but to return. Not just to cry, but to connect. Not just to survive the silence, but to hear your soul sing within it. In Gate 3, we'll explore the moment when this inner reconnection begins to alter your outer world. When relationships start shifting, when old patterns fall away, and when new standards are born, not from bitterness, but from clarity. But for now, Gemini, rest in the miracle of this. You are no longer waiting to be loved. You are becoming the love you've always longed for. Gate 3, the shift begins when your inner change transforms everything around you. Gemini, by now you've begun to realize the space that once felt like emptiness has become a sanctuary. The bed that once reminded you of absence now holds the presence of your own returning soul. And most importantly, the voice you've been learning to hear again, your own, has started to speak with more certainty, more strength, and more softness. You are no longer just alone. You are becoming whole. And when wholeness begins to take root within, the outer world cannot remain unchanged. This is where the shift begins. Relationships that once felt essential now feel distant. Conversations that used to drain you now fall flat. People you once tolerated now make you feel tired before they even enter the room. And the reason is not because they changed. You did. You're vibrating at a different frequency now. And as this shift unfolds, a quiet, undeniable truth begins to rise. Not everything or everyone can come with you where you're going. It doesn't always happen with drama or final goodbyes. Sometimes it's just a slow drift, an energetic mismatch you can't ignore anymore. A friend who only calls to vent, not to listen. A family member who invalidates your softness. An ex who tries to reappear when your heart finally feels peaceful. A situationship you entertained just escaped the silence, but now you cherish that silence more than their attention. At first, the shedding may feel strange. You might question yourself. Am I being too harsh? Too distant? Too sensitive? But Gemini, this is a rejection. It's recalibration. You're no longer willing to shrink yourself just to stay connected. You've stopped mistaking availability for intimacy. You've stopped calling chaos chemistry. You've stopped chasing those who only love the idea of you, not the reality of your deep, sensitive, multidimensional soul. This is the moment when standards rise. And not out of pride, but out of peace. You're no longer looking for someone to fill a space beside you. You're looking for someone who honors the space within you. Someone who meets you as an equal, not someone who needs saving, fixing, or pleasing. Let me tell you about Leora, a Gemini woman in her late 30s who had been sleeping alone for over a year after a long-term relationship ended. At first, she hated the silence. She called it failure. But through journaling, long walks, and weekly solo dinners, something in her began to shift. One day, she received a text from an ex who once made her question her worth, and she felt nothing. No anger, no longing, just clarity. He no longer fits who I become, she told me. And I didn't have to convince myself of it. I felt it. That's a shift. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Because the clearer you are about your energy, the less tolerant you become of anything that disturbs it. And from this new place, Gemini, a new kind of magnetism is born. You start drawing in people who feel calm, not chaotic. Opportunities that feel aligned, not overwhelming. Conversations that go deep, not wide. You notice that you no longer need to chase momentum. Your presence alone creates movement, because you're no longer living to be liked. You're living to be true. This phase also redefines what love means to you. You no longer confuse attention with affection. You no longer perform your value to be chosen. You no longer silence your needs just to maintain closeness. Now, love becomes a meeting place, not a battlefield. It becomes a sanctuary, not a performance. You understand now that someone sharing your bed is not enough. They must also share your values, your vision, your emotional maturity. You want someone who is at home in your silence, not afraid of it. Someone who sees the woman you become, not who they want to mold you into. And if that kind of love takes time, you're okay with that. Because for the first time, you're not afraid of your own company. You're not in a rush to replace the quiet. You're learning to dance with it. And from that place, you become powerful, magnetic, whole. You no longer move from fear. You move from discernment. You no longer ask, do they like me? You ask, do I feel safe with them? Do I feel seen? Do I feel energized or emptied in their presence? And those questions, Gemini, become your compass. They protect you from returning to old patterns, from reopening doors that were closed for a reason, from mistaking loneliness for lack. Because now you know, loneliness was never the enemy. It was the awakening. You have learned what most people never do. That solitude is not the absence of love. It's the presence of self-respect. That being alone doesn't mean being unloved. It means being unavailable to what doesn't nourish you. That healing doesn't happen in the arms of someone new. It happens when you stop abandoning yourself in the name of connection. Gemini, you are no longer a woman who needs to be chosen. You are a woman who chooses, consciously, lovingly, wisely, and soon you will choose again. Because this shift isn't the end. It's the preparation, a soft clearing of space, a sacred rearranging, so that when the right person arrives, and they will, you will be ready to meet them not from lack, but from light. In Gate 4, we'll dive deeper into what it looks like to live from this new standard, how your daily habits, emotional boundaries, and future vision begin to reflect the wholeness you've now claimed. But for now, let this truth settle. You are not hard to love. You were just too soft in spaces that required you be numb. Now that you're awake, you'll never go back. Gate 4, a new life built on truth. Living your healing one choice at a time. Gemini, healing is not a destination. It's a daily decision. A choice made again and again, not just in the big life-altering moments, but in the small, quiet ones. The ones that happen before sunrise, before a text is answered, before a boundary is crossed. Now that your inner world has shifted, it's time to rebuild your outer world to match it. This is where many falter. Not because they don't want to change, but because they don't know how to bring that change into their habits. But you, Gemini, are different. You were born to adapt. Your mind is fluid. Your thoughts are quick. And when you are anchored in truth, not performance, your ability to redesign your life is nothing short of brilliant. So let's begin not with what's missing, but with what's possible. What does it look like to live from self-respect? What does it look like to create a daily rhythm that says, I am enough, I matter, I deserve softness? It starts in the smallest place. Your bed. That same space where you once felt abandoned now becomes your altar. You fluff your pillows not to impress anyone, but to tell yourself, I am worth comfort. You choose sheets that feel like silk against your skin, not because someone else will see them, but because you will. You light a candle. You bless the space. You reclaim the night not as loneliness, but as sacred restoration. Because when you treat your own presence as sacred, everything else begins to respond. You begin saying no differently, not harshly, but with calm certainty. Not, I'm sorry I can't, but that doesn't align with what I need right now. And you say it without guilt. You answer texts more slowly, not to punish, but because you've stopped performing urgency as proof of love. You choose time over reaction, intention over obligation. You dress for how you want to feel, not how you want to be seen. You stop over-explaining. You start honoring silence. You no longer need to convince others to see your value, because you have seen it yourself. Gemini, this is what it means to live healed. It's not perfection. It's permission. Permission to rest when others hustle. Permission to feel deeply when others numb. Permission to change your mind, your pace, your plans, because you're no longer trying to keep anyone comfortable at your own expense. This inner permission turns into outer clarity. You start creating new standards, not just for romance, but for everything. You surround yourself with people who speak your new language, calm, honest, soul-aligned. You say goodbye, not always out loud, but energetically, to those who once needed you broken to feel whole. You begin choosing food that nourishes, movement that reconnects, music that soothes. Your morning becomes a ritual. Your evenings become reflection. You become someone who no longer needs drama to feel alive, because you've discovered the peace within you is more intoxicating than any adrenaline ever was. And from this rhythm, purpose returns. You feel clearer about your dreams. You stop chasing validation. You begin asking, what wants to come through me now that I'm not tangled in other people's expectations? And answers come. Opportunities arrive. Not because you're pushing, but because you've made space. Let me share the story of Celine, a Gemini woman who used to say yes to every invitation, every favor, every demand. She called it being reliable. But after her own season of sleeping alone, of deep journaling and soft mornings, she began saying no without guilt. She created a morning ritual of tea, no phone, and 5 minutes of gratitude. 1 month in, her nervous system had shifted. She no longer woke with anxiety. Her skin glowed. Her voice steadied. I didn't change my job or move cities, she told me. I just stopped abandoning myself. Gemini, that is your task now. To stop abandoning yourself in the daily moments where it matters most. Because when your inner life becomes a sanctuary, your outer life starts aligning naturally. You begin attracting only what matches your peace. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop making yourself small to avoid rejection. You stop calling survival strength. You walk into rooms differently, not looking for permission, but bringing presence. You enter conversations differently, not try to be heard, but listening with your entire soul. You no longer chase chemistry. You seek connection, resonance, integrity. And yes, this may feel lonely at times. There will still be nights when the quiet feels heavy, mornings when you crave the comfort of old chaos. But those moments no longer define you. They pass. Because now, you trust yourself to return to truth. You know how to be with yourself. You know how to breathe through discomfort. You know how to hold space for your healing. Gemini, you are becoming the woman who doesn't just read about alignment. She embodies it. She doesn't just want love. She lives love, starting with herself. She doesn't wait for her life to happen. She creates it one sacred, intentional choice at a time. In Gate 5, we'll explore what begins to enter your life now that you created the sacred foundation. The love, the connection, the opportunities that finally match your truth, not as tests, not as illusions, but as reflections of the woman you become. For now, take this with you. Every moment you choose integrity over image, you are rewriting your story. Every time you say yes to yourself, the universe says yes back. And every night you sleep in peace with yourself, you are preparing to meet a love that feels just like home. Gate 5, the return, when alignment attracts the love and life you deserve. Gemini, do you feel it? The shift in your field. The subtle rearrangement of everything around you. Not through force, not through striving, but through resonance. You are no longer chasing. You are attracting, not because you figured out some magic formula, but because you finally stopped betraying yourself. And that energy, it's irresistible to the universe, to others, and most beautifully to yourself. This is a return, the return of clarity, the return of genuine connections, the return of love that doesn't ask you to shrink to fit. And it all begins now, because the space has been made. When you were lying in that bed alone, grieving what was missing, what you didn't realize was that you were clearing a sacred space. Space in your heart, space in your schedule, space in your energy field. And now, into that openness, the universe begins to pour exactly what you're ready to receive. But here's the truth. What comes now won't look like what came before, because you are not who you were before. You won't settle for love that costs you your peace. You won't entertain people who only love the surface of you. You won't ignore red flags just to feel wanted, because now you've tasted the sweetness of your own alignment, and you won't trade that for false comfort. The people who are arriving now, they meet you where you are. They speak your soul's new language, truth, tenderness, mutuality. You'll feel in your body when they enter your life. Calm, not chaos. Clarity, not confusion. Depth, not performance. And Gemini, this includes romantic love, but it's not limited to it. You begin to attract friendships that nourish you instead of drain you. You'll find collaborators who don't just admire your mind, but honor your heart. You'll begin to see opportunities flow and that match your authentic expression, not your masked ambition. All of it is a mirror of your own internal frequency. Finally steady, finally sovereign. Let me tell you about Hannah, a Gemini woman who had just come out of years of relationships based on proving her worth. After a long year of intentional solitude, sleeping alone, cooking for herself, spending weekends reading and writing and tending to her spirit, she met someone new. But this time, something was different. I didn't feel like I had to impress him, she told me. And he didn't fall for my charm. He fell for my stillness. That's when she knew it was real. Because the person who sees you in your stillness, in your softness, in your no performance, no makeup, no mask self, that's the person who's safe. That's the kind of love Gemini is meant for. Not intensity that burns you up, but connection that lets you breathe. And this only comes when you've learned to breathe with yourself first. You may still have moments of doubt. After all, you've lived many years navigating love from your mind, calculating, predicting, adapting. But now, your body is the compass. Your peace is a permission. If something costs your energy, you know it's not for you, no matter how shiny it looks. That is wisdom. That is sovereignty. That is alignment. From this place, the decisions you make become cleaner, simpler, more intuitive. You stop asking, will they love me? And start asking, do I feel safe to be fully myself here? You stop asking, how do I keep them? And start asking, do they keep pace with the version of me I'm growing into? You stop asking, when will it happen? And start trusting that what is yours cannot miss you when you are fully embodied in your truth. And that, Gemini, is the final lesson of this sacred transformation. You are no longer available for what doesn't honor the woman you become. You are not desperate. You are discerning. You are not empty. You are full of wisdom, of softness, of quiet power. And from that fullness, everything changes. You walk differently. You speak more slowly. You make decisions from your intuition, not your insecurity. You don't react, you respond. You don't panic, you observe. You don't run, you root. And when love comes, and it will come not as a rescue, but as recognition. It will not complete you, it will meet you. Because the woman who once feared sleeping alone is now the woman who has become so aligned, so radiant in her own presence, that only a soul with equal depth can approach her. You are no longer waiting for the knock on the door. You are the door, open only to what's real. And now, Gemini, with everything you remembered, released, and reclaimed, you're ready, not just to love again, but to love from a place that's healed, whole, and home to itself. In the conclusion, we will gently close this journey and reflect on the strength it took for you to walk it, the magic that's beginning to surround you now, and the profound truth that your solitude was never abandonment. It was divine realignment. Conclusion, Gemini, you were never alone. You were becoming whole. Gemini, take a deep breath. Think back to the moment this journey began, when you lay in bed each night, staring at the empty space beside you, wondering if something was broken. If you were broken, you called it loneliness. You called it bad luck. You called it an ache you couldn't explain. But now, with the wisdom of your own presence holding you steady, you understand. It was never abandonment. It was preparation. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned gently, divinely, wisely for the love and life you truly deserve. One that begins not in someone else's arms, but in your own unwavering self-trust. One that no longer asks, "Am I enough?" Because you already know the answer. Yes, you are. You've walked through stillness and turned it into strength. You've faced silence and turned it into clarity. You've met your own eyes and finally said, "Welcome home." And from here, everything opens. The kind of love that matches your softness. The kind of friendships that reflect your truth. The kind of opportunities that honor your values. Not because you chase them, but because you became the kind of woman who only receives what aligns. Gemini, if this message found you during a time of transition, heartbreak, or sacred solitude, I want you to know you are not alone. Every night you spent questioning yourself was not wasted. It was transformation. Now I invite you to share your heart. Leave a comment below. Tell us how your own season of sleeping alone has changed you. What have you discovered about your truth? What boundaries have you set? What dreams are reawakening? Your voice may be the light someone else needs tonight. Because together we heal, and together we rise.